Guys, Rob Cushing here with BetterClaim.com music blog, and I'm here to talk to you today about part 3 in our series on getting the most out of your studio speakers set up in your recording studio. Okay, part 3 today, we're going to talk about acoustic treatments. Okay, so just before we do that, as always, if you find any value in this video, I want to hear from you. Okay, if you have any questions about what I cover in here, what the content I talk about, the business I have, etc. You have questions about that, reach out to me through my contact information below. Also, this is based on a blog post that I wrote a while ago, a series of them. So I have the link to the original blog post here. So feel free to read along with that as well. Okay, so let's talk about acoustic treatments. Okay. At this point, you've probably followed the advice of my previous videos and blog posts, okay? Part 1 where we talked about speaker placement, part 2 where we talked about using reference tracks, okay? But maybe perhaps after all that something still isn't quite right, okay? In this case, especially if you're dead set on the studio you're already using, it might be time to look into using acoustic treatment for your recording studio. So before you start, excuse me, doing a lot of videos today. Okay, so before you start putting these up on your wall, however, you want to make sure you follow the advice of those previous videos first. Okay, speaker placement reference tracks. Okay, having acoustic treatments is going to be really very little value if you haven't taken the time to do your speaker placements in conjunction with your reference tracks, and in particular if you're blasting loud enough to bother your neighbors, right? Okay, so let's start with the floors. Your best bet is to have a carpeted room. Otherwise, if you have a hard floor, you're going to want to have rugs distributed evenly on your floor so that you'll have equal coverage for sound isolation. Okay, that scenario is true for most smaller studios, particularly if your studio and control room are one and the same. Okay, if you happen to have a separate recording room from the control room, then it's actually advantageous to have a reflective floor. So in that case, where it's separate, hardwood or something like that is fine in that case, okay? So we talked about the floors. Next, let's look at the walls, okay? Keep in mind that there are usually 2 different types of acoustic treatment, okay? There's something called absorbers, and there's something called bass traps, okay? And the absorbers do just that. They absorb as much sound reflection as possible so that it doesn't reflect back into your microphones. And even if you're doing strictly electronic music with no mics, that's really good to have, particularly for playback on your speakers, okay? Your best solution for absorbers is usually some type of foam treatment. Now, while larger studios might have fiberglass panels utilized, for purposes of those watching this video, we're going to assume that you're in a smaller home studio, okay? So you're going to want to be able to strike a fine balance of reducing reflections without deadening the room too much, okay? So particular note, especially if you're a beginner, is to get some what's called broadband absorption tiles. Okay, there's companies like I name them elsewhere in the blog post, and I have links to those if you want to look at them further in the blog post. There's companies like Sonex and RLX, and they offer acoustic treatment solutions, right? That are extremely effective. But might be pricey for the average recording enthusiast, okay? And so in this case, you can entertain a few different scenarios here. You can either fork open the money at once, or you can add on to your room over time, or you can go with a cheaper solution. So if you want to go with a cheaper solution, there's actually a book that I recommend called The Drum Recording Handbook. And that's by this producer-composer. He's really well known in the industry. His name is Bobby Owsinski, I think. I'm sorry, Bobby, I keep mispronouncing your name all the time, but his name is Bobby Owsinski, okay? And I have a link on my blog post to follow him on Twitter, which I recommend doing. Now, this book, The Drum Recording Handbook, although it's tailored towards drum recording enthusiasts, what he relays in the book is actually extremely beneficial to all recording studios, especially in Chapter 2, where he details how to do acoustic treatments on the cheap. And this is like utilizing materials that you can find like Home Depot, right? So highly recommend if you want more specifics on like setting up a cost-effective yet an optimal solution, okay? So there's a few quick pieces of advice on absorbers that I want to take to heart, okay, before we get into bass traps. So some piece of advice on absorbers, okay? Do not do the egg crate cheaper absorbers, okay? Some studio owners, and I was guilty of this before, guys, Some studio owners are really convinced that putting those up, particularly the ones like you use in bed padding, are going to do the job, but it's actually going to cause your room to be more reflective because of the material. Yeah, it's great. Um, okay, and another thing on absorbers, another bit of advice: never, ever, ever, ever paint over acoustic foam. Okay, and what you're going to end up doing is, if you do that, you're going to end up creating a reflective surface because of the paint, and then you just wasted your money. So don't ever paint over this. Okay. Make sure any acoustic foam that you used is fireproofed. Cheaper ones, like the ones I mentioned before, the A-Crate stuff, that's going to go up like gasoline at the slightest spark. So avoid that stuff, okay? And don't cover your entire studio with acoustic treatment, okay? You basically want about like maybe 70% coverage at most, so you can have some air, so to speak, in the sound output, okay? All right, so that's absorbers. Let's talk about bass traps. That's the other type of acoustic treatment, okay? Basically, bass traps are there to minimize low frequency buildups in the corner of a room. So that's really evident like when you're doing drums or like any guitar or bass amps. When you're recording those, bass traps help immensely, okay? So there's several solutions out there for bass traps, but probably the easiest and the most cost-effective one is to really just build them yourself, okay? You can make like a 1 by 2 inch or a 2 by 2 inch like frame from plywood, like just like about so thick, and maybe just about around and stuff. Just make like a basic frame from plywood, and then you fill the frame with like R18 fiberglass insulation, and then you staple some fabric over it. Okay, but you just don't want to stretch the fabric too tight. That's your do-it-yourself bass trap. Okay, and there's some really good examples of do-it-yourself bass traps that I linked on my blog post as well. Again, that link to my blog post is below. And there's a guy I recommend checking out as well. His name is Ethan Weiner, W-I-N-E-R, and I reference him. He's a really awesome audio expert in how to do that stuff. Okay, so hope that was really of help to you, particularly as you're going to be able to follow up in these related articles and videos that we have throughout the series, and that's going to help you further fine-tune your acoustics in your studio. Okay, so in the next video, I'm going to reference another blog post where we can take this whole thing a step further by utilizing some electronic plugins to help further shape your sound. Okay, so I hope you found that of value. Once again, my name is Rob Cushing from the Better Claim Music, betterclaim.com music blog. It's a little late, and I wanted to get these videos out of the way before I head to bed. Yeah, so a few things real quick. Number one, if you got any questions about what I do, my business, I highly recommend you check out the link to the business I do, which has helped me find the freedom and the ability I want to be able to record my music without being stuck in a job. And that link is below at www.plugplayandlive.com. Now, once again, it's www.plugplayandlive.com. Alternately, you can also use www.stepuponstage.com as well. Okay, so that site's for there. Definitely check those out. Okay, my friend Chris Jones, actually, and he's the co-founder of the business I'm on, will actually walk you through a quick video explaining how everything works, and then we can lock arms to kind of talk about it a little further. And again, my contact info is there if you want to message me. And then the other thing is, as a bonus for you guys, if anyone's looking for any way to, if you're purchasing music gear online through places, like stuff you're going to buy anyway, through places that you're going to buy from anyway, like if you're getting Apple stuff from the Apple Store, or macmall.com or something, or if you're getting guitar stuff or drum or sound reinforcement things from like Guitar Center Online or Sam Ash or Musician's Friend, that type of thing. If you want a great way to find out how you're going to make cash back and all that stuff, message me, okay? I'm going to hook you up. We'll talk further on that. So once again, my name is Rob Cushing from the betterclaim.com music blog. Stick further. In our next series, video in the series, we're going to talk about electronic plugins to further reinforce your sound, all right? Hope you found this video of value, and we'll talk soon. Take care.